Please welcome the Executive Director of the Radio, Television, Digital News Foundation and Association, Dan Shelley.
Hi, everybody. Excuse me 1 second while I do my Marco Rubio. Thank you guys so much for being with us tonight to honor the First Amendment, specifically its guarantee of a free press, and to recognize its admonition that the United States of America has and should have a free press. Welcome to this very special evening, the 30th Annual Radio, Television, Digital News Foundation First Amendment Dinner and Awards. What a great night. Give yourselves a round of applause. We would not be here tonight were it not for the vision and the philanthropy of the founders of this event, led by the consummate news talent representative, PR executive, and longtime RTDNF trustee George Glazer, and his wife Mina. Sadly, both passed away within the past few years. But we're honored tonight by the presence of George's and Mina's son, Brian Glazer, president and executive producer of World Satellite and Television News and Media Relations. Brian, thank you. Thanks largely to our First Amendment dinner, RTDNF has awarded millions of dollars in scholarships and fellowships to aspiring and professional journalists, and has provided professional development to working journalists, helping them improve the manner in which they've served their communities. In fact, one of our scholarship winners from the past is among our distinguished journalists receiving an award tonight. You'll meet him later. First, though, I have to tell you that we as journalists are striving every day to fulfill our solemn obligation to help create a more informed and educated society. But we are facing not one, but two existential threats. First, the calling we have chosen and work hard every day to fulfill remains under attack from America's highest-ranking elected official and those who support or merely mimic his anti-responsible journalism screeds. Let me be absolutely clear. No one in this room is a purveyor of fake news, and no one in this room is an enemy of the American people. I know that we and you are working hard every day to rebuild public trust that's been lost as a result of the inexcusable use of pejorative terms weaponized precisely to erode our credibility. But we must do even more. We must be transparent about how we cover the news, not just report the news and expect a sometimes cynical public to believe us. We must hold ourselves accountable for mistakes, correcting them promptly, then explaining clearly how they happened and what we're doing to keep them from happening again. And we must listen, not just to the newsmakers we encounter, but to the news consumers on whose trust we rely to be effective and successful. The second existential threat is what's happening to our brothers and sisters, our fellow journalists in the local newspaper business. More important, it's the public in small and mid-sized communities across the country who are suffering the most. 2 years ago, for the first time in more than 25 years, that our parent organization, RTDNA, had been conducting such research, we found that there were more journalists working in radio and TV station newsrooms across the country than in newspaper newsrooms. That trend continued last year, and I'm confident that when we release this year's survey results, it will be sad, but we will see the same thing yet again. Now, as a lifelong broadcast journalist, I spent a career competing against newspapers in the communities where I worked. Even today, I bristle at the label some newspaper-centric journalists and scholars have given the current landscape, news deserts, because it implies, or at least prompts me to infer, that only newspapers are capable of serving local communities well. Well, we here tonight know better. Many of your local broadcast companies, which were already doing an outstanding job of serving your communities, have poured unbelievable assets into providing additional newscasts, new and expanding digital and OTT platforms, investigative reporting units, and other innovations specifically to serve your local communities better. Journalists displaced from the traditional newspaper industry are, with few exceptions, well-trained, experienced, thoughtful, and know how to dig into a story, not just answering the 5 W's and the H, but digging deeper to provide meaning and context to what they report. Wouldn't they make great additions to your newsrooms? They could fill important positions on and off camera. They could help train the young journalists in your smaller and medium-sized markets. They could enrich the journalism you offer your viewers and listeners by doing in-depth stories on digital platforms, or, perish the thought, even on the air. Strong anecdotal evidence shows that enrollment in many of the nation's top journalism schools has increased significantly in the last few years. You will always have places, and you'll always have the need for the best and the brightest young journalists emerging into the professional world. But certainly you also have room for seasoned, disciplined print reporters who can bring additional depth and breadth to your coverage. Become oases in America's news deserts. Your viewers, listeners in the cities and towns you serve need a refreshing drink of water and a pleasant fragrance of blossoming local news products that reflect an even stronger commitment to serving them, to empowering them to make positive changes in their communities. Maybe, just maybe, and I believe the prospects for success are substantial, by joining forces we can place America's dust bowls of journalism into the dust bin of history. Thank you. Before we begin tonight, we'd like to pause and remember 2 former RTDNF First Amendment Award recipients who left us during the past few months. New Orleans native Cokie Roberts was best known as a pioneering radio journalist for NPR and later a TV correspondent and political analyst for ABC News. In 2009, when Cokie received her Leonard Zeidenberg First Amendment Award at this very dinner, she said, and I quote, "We all know there's a big difference between a couple of thoughtful people trying to get some solution and a shout fest where the others are seeking attention and the broadcasters are hoping for ratings." Very prescient indeed. San Antonio native Jim Lehrer was best known as the co-creator and co-anchor of the PBS McNeil-Lehrer Report, and later the anchor of the PBS NewsHour. He was a seemingly perennial presidential debate moderator. Mostly, though, he was known for his unfaltering adherence to a code of ethics he developed himself, part of which reads, "Do nothing I cannot defend, present every story with the care I would want if the story were about me, assume the viewer is as smart and as caring a person as I am, assume personal lives are a private matter until a legitimate turn in the story mandates otherwise. Carefully separate opinion and commentary from news stories and clearly label everything." The 2001 recipient of the RTDNF Leonard Zeidenberg First Amendment Award, Lehrer and former journalist partner Robert McNeil also received RTDNA's highest honor, the Paul White Award, in 1990. Let's have a moment of silence for Jim and Cokie. Now, on with the celebration.